Well, Nick, welcome to the program, and the Fed's latest banking satisfaction survey has been released, and well, the news isn't that flash really, is it?
Thanks, Mark. So yes, the banking survey was done in November, and we've been chewing over the results of that. It's shown a big increase in interest rates since the last survey in May. So in terms of how big, the average mortgage interest rate in our November survey was 6.29%, up from 4.59% 6 months before in May. The average overdraft interest rate was 8.59%, which is up from 7.1% back in May. These increases aren't surprising considering the Reserve Bank's recent increases in the official cash rate to fight against high inflation. In their comments, many farmers understood that rates had to go up and were more ready to blame the government for its loose policy that has driven up inflation and necessitated tighter monetary policy now. However, that said, there's also been some resentment about banks increasing their lending margins on top of higher base rates, and that is something banks can do something about.
So as far as these interest rates, how will that impact input costs?
Yeah, so higher interest rates certainly won't help. For a farm with a $3 million mortgage, a rate increase of 2 percentage points, say from 5% to 7%, would cost an extra $60,000 per year in interest. This at a time when on-farm inflation, price inflation, is already running hot, with Statistics New Zealand's latest Farm Expenses Price Index showing farm input prices up more than 13% between September 2021 and September 2022. And that's a lot higher than the 7.2% annual rate of inflation for consumers generally. The biggest increases for farm inputs were for fuel and fertiliser, but higher interest rates are now also an upward driver of farm expenses after, for a few years, been a downward influence on expenses.
Have you got a percentage figure for how many farmers are under pressure?
Yeah, so overall, 17% of respondents to our survey felt that they'd been coming under undue pressure from their banks, and that was up 3.5 points from May when it was just under 14%. Share milkers were feeling the most pressure, with 21% feeling under pressure, about the same as in May. We also asked about mental well-being, and we found that 40% of farmers felt their mental well-being had been affected by debt levels, interest rates, changing conditions or other forms of pressure.
What about the levels of banker satisfaction from the farmers? You alluded to that earlier, that some are not happy.
Yeah. So just under 60% of respondents felt they were very satisfied or satisfied with their bank relationships. While more farmers remain satisfied than dissatisfied, it's down 5 points from May's survey, and it's the lowest level since the survey began in 2015. Share milkers, they were the least satisfied, with fewer than half saying they were very satisfied or satisfied.
What about budgets? How many farmers, say, have budgets for the current season? And I guess how does that compare with previous seasons? Are they more concerned at this point?
Yeah, so 61% of respondents had a up-to-date and detailed budget for the current 2022-23 season. Generally speaking, those with debt were more likely to have a budget. Dairy farmers, 66% of them have a budget. Share milkers were 81%. They're really, really strong budgeters. Arable was pretty high at 68%, but sheep and beef and other industry group farmers were only in the 50s. Probably indicates that they tend to have lower debt levels, so they feel less of a need or requirement from their bank to have detailed, up-to-date budgets. Meanwhile, 33% had up-to-date and detailed budgets for the next season. That's the 2023-24 season, which starts middle of next year. Dairy farmers and share milkers were much more likely to have them than sheep and beef, arable or other farmers. And obviously budgeting will be very important this year, which will be tougher with squeezed incomes and high costs. And we really encourage farmers to do their budgeting and make sure that they're cautious and conservative with their budgeting.